Many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime. Another day, another time that we meet here in the morning, the 27th of July 2023. And I'm glad that you've chosen KT News as a channel to inform you today, and of course to set a good cheering tone for the day for you as well. Today is a corny day where we try and see and analyze what is happening in the market so far, just keeping a pulse on the state of the nation, despite the fact that we've had demonstrations, eye-popping figures in terms of shillings have been lost when we look at the economic side of it. But at least there is a light at the end of a tunnel, because now we can see everyone is proffering their hands that they might sit down and talk. President William Ruto giving that gesture, and of course also a very welcome reception that we have also from Raila Odinga on this as well, despite the fact that now they are seeking to get investigations and collect data to actually table of the international court regarding the brutality of police. This will be followed, of course, by the justice system as well in the country, and everyone is also looking at the IPOA when it comes to judicial or brutality of and extrajudicial killings from police as well. Today we continue to follow what is happening as far as the free falling of a shilling is concerned, and CBK says now we're having our hands off to see what the shilling will happen to it. They're saying there will not be any intervention that will be coming from Central Bank of Kenya, so that that is in a bid to try and prop up the shilling as it is. Right now, as we speak, we know it is ticking upwards in the margin of 141 going to 142, and this is adversely also affecting most Kenyans who are looking at the dollar to trade. We shall be looking at also the diminishing status of our credit in the country. We have Fitch with a recent downgrading of Kenya. What does this portend for the country as well? This is just following the Moody report also, where we were downgraded, and it seems that our credit rating is actually in the red zone as it is, despite the fact that we're trying to make sure everything is not really off kilter as far as the economy is concerned. That also will be the subject of our discussion. Right. What about the housing and the real estate? It seems that people have been complaining about the prices that the real estate is putting up, of course, on their properties, and they're saying this is not realistic compared to the jurisdiction around Kenya is really paying handsomely when it comes to a parcel of land. And we saw also that yesterday on the front page of the Business Daily as well, where we're looking at the real estate here in Nairobi. A parcel of land just here in Karen or in Ngong is going for a good eye-popping figure, and we shall be discussing that. Will there be any market correction as far as the real estate bubble is concerned? We shall be looking at that as well, and a raft of other issues as well. So it's a hodgepodge of everything. Economy here, right? They say hapa kule, and we shall be looking at how that is affecting Mwananchi this morning. Joining me, of course, we have Bill Okero, who is a businessman. Also, we have Engineer Patrick Obath, who's the chair of the KEPSA Foundation. Also, Professor Gituro Wanaina, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi School of Business. And we shall be joined as well by Derito Murithi, who is an economist, and of course, also the think tank within the Azimio as far as economic affairs is concerned. But as always, let's get firing on all cylinders by looking at what is fresh off the press this morning, beginning with the bold paper. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard today. On the front page of the Standard today is all about the hustler. It says, Hardliners fears over Ruto-Raila deal in making. That is what we have as a splash today. Nothing to do with hustlers. Hardliners fears over Ruto-Raila deal in making. That is a splash that we have this morning. It says, if this will lead to me being called a hardliner, so be it. I do not consume tear gas for the sake of myself, but for the sake of the suffering of Kenyans. The multilateral approach must birth a constitutional moment. This is what Jeremiah Kioni was saying. If this will lead me being a cold hardliner, so be it. I do not consume tear gas for the sake of myself, but for the sake of the suffering of Kenyans. The multilateral approach must birth a constitutional moment. That is what Jeremiah Kioni is saying here. We have a sub-headline. Excuse me. It's all about interest. Leaders from the two political divides are jittery over a possible deal between the president and the opposition leader that might render them orphans. We have this story tucked away on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Did they have to die? That is a burning question. Families honor protest victims, and you can see a very whippy-teary moment that was occasioned yesterday in Likoni. We have MP Mishi Mboko and other Azimio leaders are overwhelmed by grief after lighting the candles in honor of victims who died during demonstration. This is not really in Likoni, but you have a story on page 10, 11 and 12 of the Standard this morning with all the gritty details. Remember, Azimio has been holding vigil in honor of the people who died or the victims of the demonstrations. On the sidebar, woman at pains to prove Nyachai ties. That is all about property, and that story continues on page 2. Ada without hands, top academic. Read all about John Lokuta Ewoi's determination has seen him scale heights in academia to become a lecturer. And this is from the battlefield of Baragoi, Samburu, where he lost all his limbs, and right now he's actually gone against the grain and the hurdles, and he's a lecturer right now. You can read his moving story on page 3 of the Standard this morning. Also, Hurusan wins court's gun battle with DCI. That is the story on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Every Thursday you have shipping and logistics and real estate magazine that comes to make you all the wiser as far as logistics is concerned on the seafare there and the real estate as well. Remember that that's question regarding the property or the real estate value that we do normally peg on some of the parcel of lands and developments that we have here in the country. Are they exaggerated? And could there be any market correction moving forward to try and also bring down the prices as it is? We saw that in this quarter also houses in Nairobi, or houses actually in Nairobi, they've gone down as far as the prices is concerned. And teachers, civil servants, shock over pay cuts is another story that you want to follow on page 7 of the Standard this morning. This is our looks. Up next is the Daily Nation. The big shift is a splash this morning, and the flag reads politics, top politicians closing ranks, but ODM chief insists on presence of a mediator there. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. President Ruto, his predecessor Kenyatta, and Azimio chief Odinga are seemingly dropping their earlier hardline positions, with the latter two now acknowledging the Ruto presidency and the former inviting the opposition chief for talks on the current protest that have also moved from the row over the 2022 polls to the high cost of living. And we have the faces here. Mr. Kenyatta, he says that is Ruto, is my preso. I will go if he invites me for talks. Mr. Odinga, the president, knows my address and has my phone number. And President Ruto says, I'm always available for a one-on-one meeting with you. That is Raila. So everyone now, at least, is not really drawing a line in the sand, as so to speak. They're rowing back up from the stands. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, as we've mentioned before. The vigils were happening yesterday, and this is what has been captured also in the Daily Nation today. And we can see the APK party leader, Eugene Wamalwa, joining women leaders in lighting candles and laying flowers in honor of opposition protesters who lost their lives in the recent anti-government demos during a vigil yesterday at the Jaramogi Odinga Foundation in Nairobi. On the sidebar, Kerry is planning to backdate new taxes. And also, we shall be discussing this. Shock awaits employed persons across the country should the Court of Appeal lift the conservatory orders barring implementation of the Finance Act 2023 in judgment expected tomorrow. This will mean provisions with a July 1st effective date, such as the introduction of a housing tax of 1.5% of gross pay, matched by the employer, will now be implemented and applied retrospectively. This is on the back page of the Daily Nation. They always say the law cannot be applied retrospectively. So we'll also discuss this with our panelists as well and tell us how real this is. And as teachers get a cut in July pay slips, teachers yesterday received reduced salaries. And I think that is meant to be like a continuation. KRA plans to backdate new taxes as teachers get a cut in July pay slips. You can follow the story on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. NHIF heist, 2 hospitals handed 5-year suspension. National Insurance, that is National Health Insurance Fund boss tells MPs the investigations found Amal and Beirut hospitals, both based in Nairobi, Islis, guilty of fraud. And this story continues on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, American legend tips Omanyala to shine. Is on cusp of making history. This is what Johnson is saying there. And you can remember him also. He was one of the fastest runners in the world. This is on page 32 of the Daily Nation. Agency holds sugar milling in Western and Nyanza Ken and shortage bites. And by the way, sugar now prices have gone up. And we have the halting of crushing of the canes right now for 6 months. And that's why the prices also have ticked up as far as the sugar shortage is concerned. This is the Daily Nation this morning. Star is up next. Ruto troops welcome talks, reject handshake. Odinga trashes Ruto tweet as PR gimmick, says president not serious about invite. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star. But we're in the age of tweet diplomacy, right? Other jurisdictions are taking tweets very seriously. Right, so we wonder why here not, and of course we shall be hearing from our panelists this morning. And is the ceasefire president tweeted on Tuesday night his readiness to meet Raila. Ruto meets Suluhu as Raila visits victims of police brutality, and you can have an insert there of President shaking hands with President Suluhu of Tanzania during the official opening of the Africa Heads of State Human Capital Summit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania yesterday. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka on the other side, and ODM boss Raila Odinga console a victim of police brutality at Mama Lucy Hospital. This story continues on page 7 of the Daily Nation, of the Star, I should say, this morning. And woman fights to prove she is late Minister Nyachai's widow. It's all about inheritance disputes. This is on page 9 of the Star this morning. Let's see what the People Daily is holding for us today. Raila, Ruto isn't serious on talks. This is what we have as a splash this morning. Stalemate, as Mayor Chief says, President engaged in doublespeak of a dialogue by inviting him through social media and only responding when the country's temperatures rises after demos. The story continues on page 4. The president is not being serious. If he wants to meet me, he cannot invite me through WhatsApp or social media. That is the story that you want to follow inside the People Daily this morning. And all about diplomacy, visiting a neighbor, President William Ruto and his Tanzanian counterparts, Samia Suluhu Hassan, during the official opening of the Africa Heads of State Human Capital Summit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania yesterday. You can read all about it also inside the publication today. Motorists set to start journey on electricity-powered cars and also bikes. This is on page 16 of the People Daily. And Huru's son wins round 1 in court gun battle. Also, bid appeal for Kenyans. Bid appeal for Kenyans as prices of sugar increase. High cut attributed to shortage of commodity due to holding and closure of state-owned millers. This is on page 3 of the People Daily this morning. This is how it looks. You can grab a copy for yourself. Suluhu alichezwa? That's the question that is being asked. So, Suluhu alichezwa? Serikali ya Kenya yakana kumwalika rais wa Tanzania siku moja baada ya Raila kudai alipuuzwa na Ruto. And of course, you can see the government has stoutly denied this particular visit of Suluhu in the country. But we have Azimio insisting that also Right Honorable Raila Odinga met with Suluhu and President William Ruto was a no-show. You can follow all the gritty details inside Taifa Leo this morning. Wajiri sasa roho mkononi. That is another story that you want to follow. Mahakama kutoa uamuzi kuhusu iwapo mswada wa fedha utatekelezwa. And that is tomorrow. Everyone will be keeping their eyes peeled to see what will be the determination of the courts as far as the Finance Act is concerned. And we can see already the government is standing at the ready to apply this particular act retrospectively. So you can read all the details inside the Taifa Leo. Mapenzi ya pasua wabunge, hoja ya elimu ya ngono shuleni yazua hisia mseto. It's all about sex education, health also. This is sponsored by Kirinyaga Women Rep that has sparked a lot of debate. And of course, members of parliament, the legislators who are pursuing the view that that is within the remit of parents to do that when it comes to sex education. It's not for the teachers to do that. That is the debate. But you can read the story on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Raila alima serikali kwa vifo ukatili. You can follow the story on page 4 of the Taifa Leo today. If we may buckle down to business, let's see what the Business Daily is holding for us this morning. Banks to access secret state database in dirty cash fight. Move grants lenders. New tool to catch money launderers. Lenders to track smurfs who bank for true honor or true honors. All right, the smurfs will be unveiled, and of course we'll know who are actually the directors of this monies or people who are bankrolling or banking these monies as well. Financial institutions will soon be granted access to a state database on secret owners of companies to enable them to swiftly flag and report suspicious transactions involving people using proxies, friends and relatives to evade the anti-money laundering law. And this is part of the amendments to the anti-money laundering law now headed to Parliament, which seeks to remove the blindfold that has undermined the efforts by banks to flag suspicious transactions. Well, while this is happening, we know also there's a cabinet approval that that the transactions which are an eye-popping figure. We know there was a limit of 1,000 when, not really 1,000, but 1 million. But now that has been lifted. And people are asking what is the rhyme and reason of actually lifting this particular threshold when we're trying to fight money laundering and fraud as well. We shall be looking at that, and this is on page 3 of the Business Daily. Set to backdate new taxes, should court lift freeze order. That is another story that you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. The Kenya Revenue Authority has revealed plans to backdate the taxes it hasn't collected during the suspension of the controversial Finance Act 2023. Should the High Court lift the freeze order in what promises to be a double blow to salaried workers who had escaped the July deductions. The Court of Appeal is expected to issue its judgment on Friday, following a petition filed by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u seeking to have the orders barring implementation of the revenue-raising law lifted. We have the story that is well laid out for you on page 3 of the Business Daily this morning. On the side, but there we have the ticker, how Nairobi Water lost 10 billion shillings via undeclared income faulty meters. That story continues on page 4. Savannah Cement creditors asked to submit their claims, and also PE firm Evercare to raise 7 billion shillings for hospitals. US-based private equity fund Evercare wants to raise 7.1 billion shillings, that is $50 million, by the end of this year to finance expansion and improvement of the hospital's facilities in Kenya and Nigeria. You have the story on page 14 of the Business Daily this morning. This is our looks. And East Africa this week, there has been a war on milk, where Kenya is blocking dairy exports by Kenyatta Farm and Algeria deal in limbo, and Uganda leader has no choice. That is, Yoweri Museveni is now wooing Senegal as prices drop 73%. Farmers cry foul. And this is what is happening politically here in the country, affecting the businesses also around in the region. And everyone is asking why the permit has not, or the license for export has not been given to Brookside. This is a story that you can follow inside the East African on page 4 and 5. Is the feisty, frosty relationship between William Ruto and President Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, affecting also their businesses? Why is the government really clamping down on the businesses, as it were, right now, that is adversely affecting also the market, or the milk market in East Africa? Also, Ruto between IMF and rioters. Kenyan leader is implementing Bretton Woods measures to access loans while struggling to quell demos over them. And also in Rwanda, Kagame party fights clanism, known for fostering national unity. RPF has moved to deal with influential members who coronated a clan chief. You can follow all that inside the East African on page 6, where you have all the gritty details there. Right, I shall be showing you the Rito cartoons much later, but we have a panelist with us just to tell us what is their feel on the current state of play and development so far that also adversely affects business. When there is political instability, we have investor flights. As we can see from the Nairobi Security Exchange, we have international investors, of course, fleeing. And we can see also the Nairobi Security Exchange, which is a barometer of how the country is faring, is not faring well as well. And we shall be looking at that much later in the course of the program. As I indicated earlier, today I've created first time with Engineer Patrick Obath, who is the chair of KEPSA Foundation. Also with me is Professor Ruto-Raila, who is a professor at the University of Nairobi School of Business. Also Ruto-Raila, who is an economist, and also the engine behind the Azimio Economic Affairs as well. We shall be joined by Bill Okero, who honestly pray for us every morning before he comes to studio. So that's why we're always blessed and shining in the morning. And of course, I shall be serving you tea as well that has been prayed for. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, good morning. Good to see you. Patrick, thank you so much. And also Ruto-Raila and also Ruto-Raila. So we have a lot to discuss this morning, and you've been following the happenings as well. And I just want to hear from you, first of all. I don't know if we begin from the political side, because it's the political economy that we normally mesh every Thursday. Ruto-Raila, yes, somber moment yesterday, candles lit, and people were in a whippy-teary mode, just trying to look and reflect on what is happening in the country as far as police brutality is concerned, loss of lives. Are we hacking back to the Nyayo era? They're asking where the rule of law went really down the tubes. Right.
Well, good morning. And
good morning to you.
It's indeed true. I think across the Republic, very sober moments yesterday. But as you know, it's been several days. It's just that perhaps yesterday was organized in larger groups. The big issue being that when Kenyans took to the streets the other time, the police responded in what we would say is disproportionate force. And of course, quite a large number of Kenyans losing their lives. I had the unenviable opportunity to visit victims. I was in Homa Bay, and I went to the referral hospital there in Homa Bay town, and found people. You know, for example, I found a young graduate teacher who had a bullet. I mean, he was shot from the back on his shoulder. We went, and there were many others like that. But obviously, this citizen would have been running away from the police. Otherwise, how did the bullet land on his shoulder? We went to a homestead to console some people, and we found this mzee. He had been shot in the leg from inside his compound. So he was not on the street, he was not whatever, but a bullet had been fired and found him in his compound and severely injured his leg. So a lot of, and of course, broader, not just in Kenya, I think many people observing, we've seen the Commonwealth lawyers, I mean, different organizations globally talking to this point that, look, Kenya, we've been here before, we really don't want to go back to those days. And obviously, this Constitution of Kenya 2010, the reason, in fact, that we willed ourselves as a nation, this Katiba, is so that we may enjoy our rights and enjoy them fully. So a somber moment, and I do hope that the Ombudsman, I do hope that the Independent Police Oversight Authority the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, and other institutions that must help us safeguard these hard-won rights will do their job so that we rescue the Republic before it's too late.
Right. Patrick?
Yeah, it is indeed, sad that people are shot with live bullets during demonstration. I think that just underlines where we are at as a country in terms of our respect for the citizen. In most places that I've been to, rubber bullets are the first line of stopping people in case they're getting out of hand in demonstrations. And then the other stuff that you've now got, great technology of all these vehicles that throw pepper, water, you name it, whatever it is, and stuff like that. That is great. That at least deters people, sort of irritates them, and they can go away and, tear gas as well and stuff like that. Although tear gas has become a bit of a joke, the other day we were hearing from my neck of the woods that people go to the police station in the morning to ask for tear gas so they can practice for the afternoon when they're going to engage.
So they can have a hard immunity.
Get hard immunity. But getting back to this, I think it is completely wrong that live bullets are used to stop demonstrations. Because in the end of that, it means that other people can now enter into that space, and start doing exactly the same thing. Thieves, vagabonds, whatever it is, can also go into that space and do their stuff in the name of hiding under the fact that live bullets are being used. And then you have this situation whereby you're not sure who it is that used bullets at that point in time, and everybody can say, no, our people okay, it was somebody else who did it, and so forth. So I think it just creates a situation that makes the investigation and trying to find out who did what very difficult. Now, people have got bullets in their hands, which they've extracted from people or they picked up in the streets. How are they going to trust the state to check that those bullets were fired either by the state or by other people that are being claimed, right? So it creates a situation whereby justice will be difficult to bring to the fore, when you don't even trust the state that if you give them a bullet that was taken out of somebody or picked up outside your house, you don't know what is going to happen to that. It can just be thrown away. They can say that, no, this was not X's gun because it has been tampered with. And I think the essence of creating trust is completely sliding away from us, right? And when people die, when they're not at the heart of something that, that they're not, they're not at the heart of what was going on, and they're just passers by, that just creates distrust. It creates anger, and it just sends a nation onto a very slippery slope that we shouldn't really have. So, I think mine is just to urge that we go back to what we are normally supposed to use to sort of manage potential demonstrations. I think in a couple of
but don't you think
shows ago, I said we need the police to understand that there are levels by which you sort of increase the use of force. There is a UN, I think there is a UN documentation or a UN agreement that all countries have signed about the use of force that says, that you have to have a certain stage first, then if that stage is breached, you go to the next one, and so forth and so on. And all police forces globally are supposed to use exactly the same rules. I'll find out what they are later on, but that is what we should get back to. And this, what has happened in the last week, I think should get us to reflect on how we manage the way people associate, protest, or exercise their right to sort of, to express themselves and so forth. So yeah, for me, this last week has been a moment that says, as a nation, we really need to reflect about how our forces, police force, is educated, managed, and instructed to work when they're doing their job.
Yeah, Gituro and Aina, this is happening even when we have the former CJ David Maraga with his task force, who right now, all over the country trying to get views on how we can reform the police. This is not the first time we are talking about police reforms, morphing into a service from a force. But still, we can see the brutal force of police as well. But when you look at these demonstrations and where we cannot tell who is a police or not because they're in the civilian clothes, they're in foreign registrations, they are actually invading homes, and there's a sense of a chaos theory, as they normally put it, that now we cannot actually pinpoint who is who. Do you think this was a deliberate effort from the security forces to make sure this really happens, so that no one is really accountable? Because when we have such a state, how then do we tell the rogues from the blue boys?
I think it's important. I pick it up from what Patrick has pointed out. But first, it's interesting. It's sad that you wake up today and hear Niger has a coup. I think there was a coup last night or something in Niger. And when you ask that question, do we have riots actually which happen in third world countries which are chaos and you cannot define? Because as we talk now, we know there is a lot of rioting in Israel, but you haven't had anybody who has been shot. We had riots in France, and you ask yourself, are we peculiar in how we do things? Probably what you're raising, the issue of being chaotic in the whole thing. There's a certain levels, and this is where perhaps we need to step back and look even at a place like Kiganjo, where the officers are trained. What is the training which goes there? How to deal with the public, how to deal with the crowd. And it was last week, I can't remember, or Monday, and we were leaving the university and going down to join the roundabout, and we found all this. I think they were looking more chocolate, the police officers, than the one they had put their handcuffs. By the way, let me point out, this morning there were 3 stupid, I'll actually call them on the national TV, stupid vehicles of police officers. And they were driving like mad people. They have no respect for the road. And we use this road with Patrick, and it's being constructed. I was like, my God, whoever they are going to pick, or whoever they are taking, can they use their head? This essence of a little level of intelligence. Because we're endangering everybody. They actually knocked a guy in the motorcycle and they left.
The police?
Yes.
This morning?
They were, this KDC, whatever. The way they were running 3 of them, they cannot be private vehicles. It couldn't. And that's the kind of thing you see now in the what happened last week. And to me, one life lost is too much. So we maybe need to go back to the training. How do you deal with the crowd?
Does it matter the training? Because if you have the training as well, and then you have an order from above.
Secondly, the point, water cannon actually do a lot of work. I don't know why you don't use water cannon. We all fear water. You remember the funny thing we used to write Delito in the high school? Darling, I love you, I'll see you if it doesn't rain. Bill, why are you smiling now?
What was that your pickup line? Come rain or sunshine.
Yeah.
You, if it doesn't rain.
It doesn't rain. Just because of how much you fear the rain. And it's sure the rain doesn't hurt. But this water here has some piri-piri in it. So we could actually use that as a front one. And when you are threatened, really threatened, somebody has a gun, then you protect yourself. But looking at yesterday, very emotional. And the question would get into my mind, am I being emotional because it's not my child? Because you feel it even if your child who has got that into that. And I think we need to move to another level of how we deal with the public. It's a concern. Yeah.
Right. And so when we see also politicians, crying, people wonder, is it now it's for the public gallery? How movingly this mood is from them as well. We cannot really tell.
And it's all across the board. I remember one time, like the university, this student was found using his cell phone in an exam. And the way he was mistreated. And I remember one time, I was giving an exam, and I go around and ask, I've never seen you in my class. He said, yeah, I have been there. So I said, fine. I didn't disturb the fella, but I made sure I stood at when they finished the exam, I stood at the door and brought a bouncer. So the guy could have gone with me, so I brought a bouncer. Then we asked him, are we in this class? Yes, give us your ID. And we found that he was doing exam for somebody else. Now, what am I trying to say here? How we treated that fella. We don't finish the exam, who sat with you at the end of it? The other one, they just hold him at the back, and they're parading the fella all around. The way we really mishandle our public is something we need to think about. Yeah.
All right. Bill Okero, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, you can chime in as well. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Bill.
As
As long
always,
as it doesn't rain.
So we've been following also the development so far, and here we are. At least there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
But is there?
Yeah.
There is.
But looking at there is. Looking at the hardliners, the fears over Ruto-Raila deal in the making, at least even looking at the daily, it's a big shift. Yeah, there's a seismic tectonic shift, as they normally say. Now this one is the tectonic shift that is happening and reverberating. Bill Okero, at least you've been saying they should come on the table and discuss and talk.
Here they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not preconditions.
True, yes. But let me first comment on the issue of the police and the demonstrations. I think my position has always been, as a Kenyan, that we protect the rights in our constitution. This is fundamental. We struggled for more than 20 years to get this Bill of Rights in our constitution.
Right.
And the attempt by the government to demonize protests, demonstrations, I think is unacceptable. All over the world, but in this country in particular, Kenyans voted for this constitution overwhelmingly fundamentally because of the Bill of Rights. This is one of the things that we've been fighting for more than 20 years, from the time of those days of Kanu. So to suggest therefore that, ab initio that, demonstrations are illegal, declare them illegal, before even they happen. And then later to say, those demonstrations were not peaceful. Now I think the government has lost. And the government has lost big time in this thing, let me tell you. Because at the end of the day, the responsibility for running the country at the back starts with the government. So when you behave like the opposition, then you're losing. You're losing big time. And it's very unfortunate that dozens of Kenyans have been killed by police, but the government found it necessary. You find a government minister rushing to go and inspect a property that is damaged, but not a single government minister to date has visited any hospital, or even visited a family to say, Poleni, for people have been injured. It's like, it's your people. The people who are being injured, or the people who are being killed, or the people who are demonstrating our position. But when you are elected to government and you took an oath, you are the president of the Republic of Kenya, all the 51 million Kenyans. You keep saying, I'm the leader for all the 51. But when it comes to demonstration, people are being killed and people are injured, you have no time for them. I keep asking myself, what happened in Kisumu, for example, and those Nyanza counties, or parts of this city? Can they happen in Nyeri? If those demonstrations happened, would the police be allowed to go and do what they did in Kisumu, in Nyeri, or in Eldoret? I mean, just ask yourselves. It won't happen. So when you give the people that mindset that, you're opposition, anybody who comes out is supporting opposition, I think it's wrong. There are many people who came out, people who supported the government in the elections, but they came out because they genuinely believed that their cost of living situation is bad, the economic situation, and they believe that the government needs to hear them, because demonstrations are one way of expressing your dissent, your disappointment about a government policy, and you want change. It happens all over the world. So I think it's very unfortunate that yet on the other side, you don't see one single person whom the government has said this person was killed by opposition. Not one. They haven't said this part, except the police who have been injured. So I think the government has lost, big time on this thing, and I think it's good that they are now seeing they have no other way but to sit down with these guys and talk to them and discuss these issues. And I think it's a good thing for the country that they have to sit down and talk. This is what we've been saying. Look, I mean, all this noise and all these threats, we are going to do this and try, mutaona. You are the ones who are scaring the investors. Let me tell you, if the intention, like I had the government accusing the opposition of saying they are sabotaging the economy, they are chasing away investors, but let me tell you, the people who will chase you out of this country are the government, because of the way they have screwed up all the government, various government policies on the economy, because of the way they are dealing with people on the streets, the way who's creating the headlines? You're helping create, you're actually playing into the hands of the opposition. And we've said this from the time they started making noise last year. We said, please don't play into the hand of the opposition. These guys have nothing to lose. They're allowed to make noise because that's what the Constitution gives them, the power to make noise. But if you start fighting with them, both of you will get into the mud. So I think it's good, the big shift, and we hope they are both sincere. And I think they should sit down. But it's a very good
point he brought, perhaps in Don Toulouse, unlike your analogy, that this is all about the cost of living. That's what it's all about. And we are sharing here with Patrick. And I want to be careful. Is it all about the who won? I think that is very clear. It's all about the cost of living. And when you look at the cost of living, do I need a mediator leader from outside there? Is it not something we need to deal with it ourselves? And if you noticed yesterday, it was very interesting in Kisumu. There was Mace in the middle, and they had all these players. I don't know what was signified. And there was this guy reading in Luo. I couldn't understand what it was about. But to me, that signified these guys were all after the food. That's all about. We know that we did the August 22nd, moved on, but the issue is the food and the cost of bringing the fuel and all that. My view, I'm not sure whether we get people from Tanzania or get them from there. They'll sort about our food. It's something ourselves we need to sit down and have our own dialogue than anything else.
Indeed.
You don't get the sense that, and I agree with Mheshimiwa Bilokelo. See, as a nation, we've lost our way and we've lost the meaning of what this constitution is. Look, when you are in office, first of all, you are not a leader of those who elected you.
All the Kenyans, isn't it?
In any circumstance, even in a cooperative, when you become chairman, you are not the chairman of those who elected you. You are the chairman of everybody. So that those in office today need to reflect really hard as to what it is they think they're doing. It's not a government for the 7 million who voted for this regime. Even the 7 million that voted for the opposition and the 8 million who didn't show up, and all the other Kenyans who are actually not voters because maybe they are not of age. Secondly, this constitution demands an opposition.
Right.
The conduct of democracy cannot function unless there is opposition. Thirdly, going to the street to demonstrate is a fundamental right enshrined in this Katiba. In the role of the police service, and mark you, the use of the word service in the constitution was very deliberate, that the police are a service to the citizens. They are not a force to try and beat up the citizens. Finally, the cost of living is not affecting opposition. The cost of living is affecting all Kenyans. And it is the government's job to solve it. Now, if you think about the management of the economy, who is in charge of monetary policy? Who is in charge of trying to control inflation? It's not the opposition. It is the Treasury. It is the central bank. and they cannot run away from that responsibility. Now, if you to get annoyed and upset and to bang tables and to threaten others because they point out what is wrong with the republic is actually bankruptcy of leadership.
But let me conclude before I was.
It was a hostile takeover.
I can't stop my message.
I was approaching you. That was making a very strong point.
Thank you very much.
And I'd have to be continued.
And I joined in the support.
Let me conclude.
Yes.
I think the decision by the president was a very positive one, and I think the opposition leader Raila should not give this precondition. I think it's an opportunity. Let him just, as the president says, call him and tell him, my friend, can I come over? Yes, they go and meet. Let the discussions begin. If he gets stuck, he can always report back to his team and say, I had tea with the guy and he told me to get lost. I mean, and he has the streets. Nobody has shut down the streets if he wants them back. But I think he must really, you cannot say, the president knows my number. I watched on international news last night, the former prime minister being interviewed, and he says, the president has my number, he knows how he can call me. I mean, you can't. I think it should not get to that level. I think they should meet. Mediation is known as these are guys who have worked together all their lives. They know each other. They are leaders in this country. They need to go and meet and have tea and talk. That will cool down temperatures. Not reduce the cost of living, but it will cool down temperatures.
Which is important.
Which is important.
For a conducive environment.
To reduce the cost of living.
Yes. Yeah.
But
So there's a very interesting... Yes.
Just take this up. I think the time for politics of, the politics of election should actually be closed.
Correct.
I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
What has happened is that the politics of elections have continued, and then whenever there's an issue, it is put on top.
Yeah.
Right? So that
Exactly,
it
that's the issue.
reinforces the issue of the politics of election. I think we need to go back to the politics of running the country, which is a different set of politics. And that is where now the opposition takes the role of the opposition in terms of holding the government to account. And that's saying that, yes, this is whatever, you are doing this, we think this is wrong, and this is what we think you should do instead. Right? Because the politics of opposition is not all about saying no, 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 no. It is no, but.
Is the alternative.
Yeah?
It's an alternative.
And the but is very important, because that then builds the case for that opposition for the next election.
Right.
Because good opposition and the ability to course correct the country means that when it comes to now the next selection, people have heard how you work, the kind of things you think about, what it is that you're trying to bring to the country. So to work towards the next election, the best thing is actually to course correct effectively and with good reason and in public. And that really is the role of the opposition. And if they get that right, then the nation will understand what they're doing and where they want to go and the kind of things they want to do. And when you now start saying, now let us run the country the next time, but they'll already be good with it.
But that's where we're having the tripwire, because you're talking about course correction. But on what framework are we talking about this course correction?
No, course correction is saying that if the budget is not good, right? These are the reasons the budget is not good, and we want to correct it X, Y, and Z, right? But the reality for me, with this budget as it is, the reality across the whole world is that course correction of this budget is going to be extremely difficult. What is the alternative, right? Given the same facts, what is the alternative, right? And the alternative may be saying, okay, fine, remove these taxes and raise money from somewhere else. Let us hear it.
Okay.
Well,
So
first of all, politics of running the country and vis-a-vis politics of elections. Now, you will notice, if you think about the budget cycle, this Finance Act, did not just drop from the air.
No.
It goes back to the budget cycle. Way back in February, we were already warning and highlighting to this regime that the way you're going to get into trouble. If you go back to the budget policy statement in February, we're not talking about now, where government, the regime is saying, we are going to increase expenditure, okay? And we are going to increase it by nearly 400 billion. Now, of course, if you increase expenditure, you have to finance it from some place.
Yeah.
Now, and of course you say, okay, why do you need to increase expenditure?
Correct. For what?
For what purpose?
Yeah.
And I give you one example. The Ministry of Health here in Nairobi has an increment in the budget of about 35 billion shillings. 12 billion shillings in recurrent expenditure. So you must answer the question, what is this that the bureaucracy in Nairobi is doing to require an increment? Because health is a fully devolved function. Why are you growing an alternative bureaucracy in Nairobi? We have been saying this from February. Now, the way the regime responded was in fact to co-opt parliamentarians who are elected into the opposition, and they are co-opting illegally. Even today, legally, on the face of the law, the opposition actually has a majority in parliament. But the regime was able to co-opt members. Okay? But they did not legally get out of the coalitions, which are legal, registered with the Registrar of Political Parties. Now, why are they doing that? In order to afford themselves the opportunity to pass whatever draconian measures they want to take. We have presented to the Republic how to create nearly 600 billion shillings in savings inside this budget. If you are saving, you will be able actually to manage the circumstance. So yes,
Have you created an alternative budget?
The forces, as a matter of fact, we have. The forces that...
Where is it?
Well, look,
Because I haven't seen it.
fair enough.
You want it documented.
No, exactly.
But
I go by what I've seen.
Not only have we done so,
Yeah.
and not only have we made it public,
Yeah.
if you look at the presentations by the private sector, for example,
Yes.
to the hearings for the finance bill, all the presentations spoke, in fact, what I'm explaining, that look inside this budget, create savings in the budget, because we can see duplication. So national government attempting to do the things that are already
Patrick
devolved.
is asking you a very pointed question.
Yeah, no, hold on.
You're
You
dragging
see,
in the
you
private
see,
sector and their presentation. He's asking you, where is your document? Where is it?
Well, I think that's a bit disgenerous to put it in that manner. Because no, look, even supposing the opposition did not in fact present an alternative, it does not mean that it is correct what the regime is doing.
Yeah, but it would be better. It would be better, Dirito, if we had one, and actually leading this one and this one.
And we see this makes sense.
You see, you are speaking as though opposition has their own parliament where they take their budget. If you look at our presentations inside parliament, if you look at our presentations to the Republic, we have pointed out where and have just given you an example right now with specific figures. So I'm not sure which of me. I've said for you an example. Simply, Ministry of Health. I've said to you, Ministry of Health, you are growing their budget by 32 billion, and I've asked and I've said 12 billion is going to recurrent, and it is not necessary, because what you're trying to do is duplicate a county function, and we can go on in water, we can go on in each and every sector.
All right.
So the alternatives are there. The alternatives are there.
What I want
Bill
is
Bill wants to help.
what I call a mandamano budget.
Let me help
This is the one I'm going on mandamano with. Because this
And
is
there's
what
a
I want
certain
to
way
see.
the government goes through the ministry to make their budget. Anyway.
You gave us the template
Patrick,
with the people's president. So we want the people's budget as well. Since there was a template of the swearing in of the
I think
people's
you need to use the bell.
I need to use the bell now. Bill.
No, I think after the 2010 constitution, or before the 2010 constitution, in the previous constitution, there was room in the standing orders of Parliament for the opposition to submit an alternative budget.
Yes.
And that's when we were allowed by the standing orders and the Constitution to have a shadow cabinet. I submitted so many, all the years I was the shadow finance minister, alternative budget. And you're allowed from the floor of the House, you're allocated time, just like the other side is allocated, to present. You see it in British Parliament every day.
Yeah.
But under this Constitution, that provision is not there. It's even for the cabinet minister himself to come and present. The whole idea of budget making was changed, to be done by Parliament. So at committee level, they are actually the finance committee, the budget committee. These are the people who actually are significantly involved in the whole process of budgeting. And this is where, if you have your say as an opposition, you have your input in that process of making the budget. But I think the issue that the opposition has complained about is that their numbers have been decimated in Parliament.
In Parliament, yeah.
Completely. They are, the few that are left still hanging there.
The voices are also muffled. We've had also legislator. You can't say this.
The majority
say put the question. Put the question.
The majority leader actually went public and said, even the few were there, we bought them off. We gave them.
You take them to a trip anyway.
Something.
Yes.
We gave them something, and we bought them off. So they voted. So Parliament, the opposition was decimated. This is why their leader now said, "I'm going to the streets with the people." So, but the fundamental issue is that many of us have been writing. I remember I wrote from last year, October, that it would be wrong to increase taxes when the economy is flat. Let us not do it. And everyone has been telling this government, no, it's wrong. And the government has argued that, no, I have a bet to pay. I have trillions to pay. I have to raise taxes. And I'm not going, I don't want to borrow. But the reality is, in the 9 months, they have borrowed over 1 trillion. So you are borrowing and you are taxing at the same time. So it's about the expenditure at the end of the day. So I think the challenge with every government of ours, they don't listen.
You don't listen.
Once you get to that office, you are a know-it-all.
There was a young man. There was a young man in Kisumu.
Can I just take a short break? Then we come back with this young man as we, of course, will pay also we have our commercial as well. The interesting editorial cartoons that we have, we'll circle back with them in the Daily Nation, in the Standard as well. And also the tweet diplomacy that seems to be, Raila seems to be having scruples with this as well. Yeah, we heard from Bill Okero.